Okay, so here are two designs that I made in Tinkercad. You're going to make a total of 4. Now, in this case, I chose to make mine with an offset so that the design is separate and above the actual shell. I'll also show you how to make these where the shell is integrated right into the shape itself. So let's get started. Okay, so we're in Tinkercad. At this point in your workflow, you should have already made and recorded the measurements for your axle cap. Remember what we always say, measure twice, cut once. In this case, measure twice, 3D print once. So you can start with either a cylinder hole or a hex hole for this design. If you're going to start with a cylinder or hex, there are a couple ways to do it. With the cylinder hole, you could just jump and grab one, but I will show you the way to convert anything in Tinkercad into a whole shape. So I'm going to drag a cylinder over. I'm going to drag my ruler over. And the reason I've got the ruler there is that once I have ruler in place, I can modify my measurements. Now I'm working in millimeters today, so hopefully you are too for this project. And you are seeing me drop in some measurements. Don't assume that mine are correct. Notice I did that by clicking on each number and making the change. Now I want to convert this shape into a hole. It's very simple. Top left, click on hole, and there we have the hole shape that will fit over the end of our axle. Now before you do anything else, I'd like you to make a copy of this shape. Go to Edit, Duplicate. Where's your copy? Watch, friends. Click and drag. There it is. That way you don't have to keep recreating it. If you want to make another copy, duplicate. Remember, you're going to make a total of one of these for each of your gears. You'll need at least 3, and for most of you, 4. You can put those ones you don't need off to the side. Okay, so first thing I'm going to show you how to do is to build the shell itself as a cylinder. So I'm going to grab a solid cylinder, and the measurements of my hole are 8.5 by 8.5 by 13 high. I'm going to change my measurements here. I'll go for 13 by 13, so I have a perfect cylinder, and I will make the height 12. You'll see why in a second. Now I'm going to click and drag, select both, go up to Adjust, Align, and I've got the alignment tool. I'm going to click on the following dots. Watch closely. Center that way, center that way. Now the reason I made the solid orange cylinder slightly shorter is so that I know that I have a nice punch through that orange cylinder using my hole. Then I'm going to click and drag across both and go to Group. And now we have a cylinder. Okay, so this is the type that will have an end cap, like I showed you in the earlier example with a train. So I've already converted a file from a vector graphic to an SVG. The link will be in the comments, or sorry, in the description, so you know where to convert your own. Remember, silhouettes work best. So here I go in the import section on the right side. I'll click on Choose File. Now I've already downloaded my SVG and saved it. Make sure you pay attention to the location where you save yours. It's called trainsil.svg. I'm going to open it up. And if you haven't worked with the import tool before, it's worth knowing that the scale, I always recommend dropping it to 10%. The height you can leave at 10 millimeters unless you're ready to modify that now. But 10% is really important. That way the size of your piece often comes in manageable. And I will click on Import. And there is our train. Now I am going to change the thickness of this to 5. And I'm going to bring my orange shell over. And I'd like this to be centered. So I'll click and drag to select both. Adjust, Align, center in one axis, center in the other. And then for your last move here, before you group these two shapes, you probably want to lift this up so that you know you've got a good joint between the two. We don't want any gaps, but at the same time, I want to have nice clearance for that collar or axle that I'm building. And at this point, I'm going to select both and go to group. Okay, so if this was your only design, or if you're following this style for all of them, I'd like you to submit them with the top, which is the train in this case, face down. That way, as it builds, you won't have any issues with any extra material that's called scaffolding that you have to pull out of that cylinder hole. So that's one style we can make. I'm going to grab another one of our cylinders here and talk about another type that you can build. And so this is one where we're going to embed that hole into the shape itself. So let's take a cone, and I'm going to select the cone and the cylinder hole. Go to adjust, align, you've seen this before by now, and center those two. Now, if you notice on this design, the hole is actually poking through or interrupting the outer shell, so that would be a problem. There are two ways to deal with this. One is to lift the cone up, or another option, let me put that back down, zeroing out my measurement, is to hold down the shift key and enlarge the cone, but I've knocked it off center, so I need to select both, go to adjust, align, and center in both directions just to make sure. And now I will select them both one more time and group them. And as you can see, now that they've been grouped, we have the center hole in the middle and underside of our design. Now, this is the way that I want you to submit this type of design, but keep in mind, if you think of this as a cross section, right? There's a center hole right there. As it prints, it has to fill that shape with supporting material that you will have to clean out. Now, what if we printed this upside down? It's a fair question. Let me rotate this. What if we printed it like this? Well, then the center hole would be clear, no worries. But you would have scaffolding supporting it all the way around that you'd have to clean up, and it would take longer as well. So it really comes down to the look that you're going for and also where you want your scaffolding with this type of design. So that is 2 out of 4 designs right there, friends. Remember, you need to have one for each gear. They should all be unique. Any questions? Drop them in the comments below. Or hey, if I'm your teacher, just ask me. Shoot me an email. You could even ask me in class. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your Tinkercad creations.